Like many Republicans, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has been searching for a solid year now for evidence of voter fraud. And in fact, he offered up a bounty for it. Texas loves their bounties these days. He offered up $1 million in reward money to be paid out of his own campaign coffers to, quote, incentivize, encourage, and reward people to come forward and report voter fraud. I mean, that's a big incentive. You could potentially make a huge sum of money if you could just prove that voter fraud happened. And there was obviously so much. I mean, for Joe Biden to steal the election, that's millions of votes that were falsified. It should be pretty easy. But it didn't really work out exactly like Dan Patrick thought. They did find someone who claimed some of the money, but the first person to come forward was Eric Frank, a progressive poll worker in Pennsylvania who reported a Republican for voting twice. And in the end, it was proven. Patrick's campaign paid Frank $25,000 for his tip, which led to the conviction of Ralph Thurman, a 72-year-old Republican who voted twice. His lawyers claimed he'd been tricked by poll workers into voting a second time, later admitting he had illegally voted a second time using his son's name. And apparently, while he is the first and only person, Eric Frank, to get some of this money, they gave him the minimum amount promised, just the $25,000. So, like, not only have they not got any Republicans that they can give money to, but he's really holding on to that money really jealously. But anyway, I just want to read you a little bit from Frank, who said, "It's my belief that they were trying to get cases of Democrats doing voter fraud, and that just wasn't the case. This kind of blew up in their face."
Of course it did. Sweet irony.
Yep. I love
totally
that. It reminds me also of some of like the Texas anti-choice stuff and like trying to put a bounty on anyone who helps a woman get an abortion or anything like this. And then a bunch of like out of state people are suing for the money, but like in order to prove that it is unconstitutional and it'll be thrown out even sooner. Like I love that. I love just like flipping this on its head. And yeah, there is not a lot of instances of voter fraud, but if you really want to go after it, well, yeah. I know a lot of Republicans who have second homes in Florida and we know where they vote. I feel like isn't Bannon one of many, many, many who are like, yeah, I'm registered in Florida and I definitely vote in Florida. Yeah. So be careful what you wish for, but look, anything that takes money away from Dan Patrick is good. So let's get that money, everybody. Times are tough. Unemployment benefits are running out. So if you're a poll worker, I don't know. It's just so funny to me. Like I really at this point, I don't know what you guys think. I feel like at this point I would have expected like some, giant barge of ballots to wash up on shore, and it's all sort of incredibly manufactured, and like Ted Cruz is the first one on the scene, very like George Costanza, like saves the whale on the beach,
climbs
like,
up on it.
Like, right, exactly. Like there would have been a moment, or like it just, somehow magically appeared in a hole in Mar-a-Lago. I guess a fan dropped him off, but like nothing like that has materialized.
Yeah.
No matter how much they hope and pray, yeah, it is not there. And just to share a stat that Bloomberg did an investigation, Bloomberg News, that there were fewer than 200 cases of voter fraud that went to court between 2018 midterms and 2020 presidential elections. I mean, come on. Yeah. There was one, I think it was I'm forgetting who did they did a survey and they basically said you got a greater chance of being struck by lightning than to find wholesale voter fraud. Yeah. Okay.
That's another thing, by the way, I would do for a reward of $25,000. You can strike me with lightning all you want. Bring on Thor. But anyway, not to take away the fun of this, but I do want to transition to why this matters, because this story is the perfect demonstration that the election was actually secure. You think that like Rudy Giuliani doesn't need that money if he could prove voter fraud? They can't, okay? But nothing of this will convince a single Republican that there was not massive voter fraud. And look, for me, that simple fact is annoying. The fact that so many people have a conception of reality that is so out of step with actual reality, but it will be used to accomplish things. Trump, for instance, is using it to fire up his base, saying at a rally last week, the single biggest issue, the issue that gets the most pull, the most respect, the biggest cheers, is talking about the election fraud of 2020's presidential election. But at the end of the day, just getting cheers is not what this is about. They're acting on it. And what do? It's not, they know that there wasn't voter fraud, but they are using it to get what they want, which is voter suppression laws, which they've gotten dozens of, and also people in positions of power to influence the results of future elections. In Arizona's race for Secretary of State, Trump has endorsed Mark Fincham, a state legislator who promoted a partisan review of Maricopa County's election results that reaffirmed Biden's victory, but he's one of the guys that was willing to do an audit. In Georgia, Trump is supporting Representative Jody Hice in a Republican primary to oust Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State who resisted Trump's pressure to rig the state's 2020 vote in his favor. And by the way, Greg Abbott just put in a new Secretary of State that tried to help Trump overturn the last election. That's John Scott. So in a number of these states, some of which Biden won narrowly, others in theory could flip, they are making sure that not only do they suppress the vote as much as possible, but that the Secretary of State, the position most in charge at the state level of how elections are handled, how audits go, how recounts go, how all of that goes, they are putting absolute insane conspiratorial flunkies into these positions. Now, some of these have been appointed already, some will be running in races, so definitely keep an eye on those. But the insane rhetoric that we're hearing now is not just bad for rhetoric's sake, it is laying the ground for potential actual challenges to elections in the future.
Yeah, not to mention with all these people in power, I think we might start seeing the stealing of elections if we haven't already, as in the case of Stacey Abrams. But with these folks counting the ballots and like in charge and stuff, like, again, Republicanism is one giant projection. They will soon fulfill their own prophecy and be the ones who are actually committing the fraud and stuffing ballot boxes. Mark my words, we're gonna see that because again, whatever they can do to maintain minority rule at all costs.
Elections have consequences and we need to focus on not just the presidency, not just the Congress, but hello somebody, we need to focus on state legislatures and governors' mansions and Secretary of State's offices because Republicans are basically saying, even though they certainly want the presidency and they want to control the Congress, they're not just resting on that, they are actually pushing on state level to have the power and the control. And Democrats have failed to do that too.
Yep, for years, they've just ignored it for more than a decade.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.